We're back, 2024. So sort of a new look for the CFB Paint podcast. Just we're kind of dropping like flies, like the kids in Willy Wonka, like slowly but surely we're getting paired off. So now it's Cory and Steve will probably be your main two going forward. I would love to invite Brian or Mark to join us should they ever get the itch to. But that being said, we're gonna start. We took the off season off. Needed a little R&R, all of us, and we're back. We're gonna do conference predictions tonight. Maybe like national championship prediction too, and then just kind of a quick one to get us started. It's week 0 this week. We also did record a win totals draft with all 4 brothers. That will be released later this week. And so we will try and discuss our predictions for championships of the various conferences without any spoilers to the win totals draft. So stay tuned to that. Cory, how are you feeling? It's week 0.
I am ready for football. I need the break just from my Saturday always being taken up, but I'm ready. I've been counting down the weeks. I'm sad that there's only one decent game this Saturday, and then I can't wait for Thursday, and I hope my wife doesn't hate me starting that.
Well, I'm pretty pumped too. I'm kind of okay with it being just like a little warm up, right? Just like one real game of consequence. There's others that probably late at night if there's nothing else going on, I might flip on the Hawaii game and just see where it's at. But outside of that, I'm kind of okay with it being kind of a slow ease your way into it. Get all the rest of the off-season to-do list done between now and week 1, and having only one major game this week gives me a little bit more leeway into getting some of that accomplished before we get in full swing.
Honestly, for me, I do think that I have enjoyed having my team that I root for play in week 0 because we get practice reports coming out a little bit earlier and everything coming out a little bit earlier, and it's like, all right, the season started for me earlier than everybody else.
Well, yeah, and tell me your own opinion on this. I feel like this offseason went by so much faster thanks to the college football video game, which I haven't played a ton of, but what I have played has been really fun. Plus the Olympics, so that's kind of a unique situation, but I feel like this offseason didn't drag on and on and on like
That's what my brother-in-law came up. He's like, dude, at least we had sports start early with the Olympics. He's like, that was the nice carry through that carry us through when it's only baseball. And you're just like, oh, I hate for those of us that don't love baseball, I'll watch the playoffs or watch the World Series, but I'm not going to watch every single 162 games or whatever it is. So if Olympics start, it gets me started on the sports 2 weeks earlier, and then we're good.
I just remember the couple weeks that the Little League World Series goes on, and that's the only thing on ESPN, and it's just the most annoying thing ever because I'm so ready for football.
Yeah, I would give it the fact that the WNBA is starting to appeal a little bit more with having these
young stars,
Caitlin Clark, and having a little girl that looks up to. She's always asking for girl sports. We watch a lot more WNBA than we ever have, and I'm a little bit more interested because they have players that are a little bit better than they've ever had, and so I'm using that over the Little League right now.
There you go, that works.
Yeah, we watched Fever last night.
I've only seen bits and pieces, but yes, it's looks like the product is catching up, which is cool. So let's dig into it. I think this one will be kind of a shorter one. I've just got them. Okay, Big 12, ACC, SEC, Big 10. That was the order I just typed them down in. So
good.
All right, Big 12. You wanna give yours first, or
no? Go ahead, have that.
Okay. This really, to me, is interesting because I think it's more wide open than most of the leagues. And I think it boils down to really 3 or 4 teams. So the ones that I would really strongly consider, if you could guarantee me health of, I'm blanking, Jalen Daniels, is that right? Kansas QB. I think they're a contender. I'm not banking on that, I think Kansas State's a contender. I think Utah's a contender. And the wild card for me is either UCF or Arizona. And Arizona had some pretty solid losses to the transfer portal with Jed Fish going to Washington. So I don't know if they could pull it off. Again, if you follow this pod for any time, some special part of my heart for the Arizona Wildcats and some of the talent that they have or had. Some of it's now on Washington's roster. But I will select the Utah Utes as my champion of the Big 12. They've talked a lot of noise in the one off season they've had in the Big 12. So their fans, I should say, and even some of their. I mean, Coach Witt said, "Yeah, we expect to win championships." Like, okay, all right, you set the expectation at that level. I have it. I think they're probably the deepest team in the conference. The question is, they've had some of their main contributors. The reason they're still around is because they got injured last year, and so what's the durability of some of those pieces? But nonetheless, give me the Utes to win the Big 12 in their inaugural season in the conference.
Who do you have them playing? Do you have any?
Oh, good question. I would need to look at schedules, but like I think Oklahoma State is like they bring back a lot from what they had last year. And like I don't think they were a killer team last year, but just another year of continuity. Their entire offensive line's back, their quarterback's back, the running back's back. I think two of their top two receivers back. The returning production on offense is quite substantial. And I expect them to be kind of a run-heavy offense, which I think travels well. So I'm going to say Oklahoma State. That one is, I don't feel as confident in that. I feel like it could be any of one of those teams that I named.
Yeah, that's actually one of the teams that you didn't name. You didn't name Oklahoma State.
Oh, did I not? Oh, sorry, I must have skipped them. But yes, I just skipped over. I'm sorry, but yes, they're in that group for sure.
Yeah, I mean they did it last year. They were very, very impressive. Leaning on the running back. That was Ollie Gordon.
Yeah,
is that his name? Yeah, He comes back this year. I mean, having played that team in Madden, they're good, or in college football, they're good. Yeah. For me, I think it kind of boils down to that Kansas State, Kansas, Oklahoma State, and Utah. I think Utah is by far the most superior team. It doesn't mean that there won't be nipped by any teams in this conference.
Yeah.
And that's the thing that's kind of crazy is this year it's like we're gonna have some weird down to the wire. Who's going to get into the conference championship?
Yeah,
because these conferences are getting so big, the divisions are no longer there, and like so, that's what I find it kind of exciting. So I too am a fan of Utah, even if their quarterback can't go. I think they've got a good backup quarterback in Isaac Wilson, the freshman. What is he out of Sky or what is it, Sky Canyon?
Corner Canyon. Corner Canyon.
Yeah. And I think that kid can play. I've watched him in high school, and I don't think that next step is going to be as hard for him. Kyle Williams said as much in interviews that kid's our number 2. And so
I mean, they went with the pig farmer last year, so
exactly. Yeah, you have the best coach in the Big 12. You have the best development team in the Big 12. I'm going to pick them to win. Along with the media, they picked them to win. And I'm going to pick them to Kansas State. I think that's a dark horse right there. I mean, not a dark horse in the fact that they're a top 3 in the media, but I think that'll be surprising to see how good they are. I believe they're starting Avery Johnson this year. Is that correct? The quarterback?
Yep. They told Will Howard to hit the road.
Dude, that guy was fun to watch. So I'm excited to see what they bring. I'm excited to see how that team develops. So for me, Utah over Kansas State. And Kansas State's been to the title game, 2 of the last 3 years or something like that? Not terribly a bad bet.
Yeah, definitely 2 years ago. I can't remember what else they've been, but yeah, Chris Kleiman's got them in a good spot. I was checking over here is like I couldn't remember if Utah and Kansas State play in the regular season. They do not. So be the first and only meeting if they were to link up in the title game. So, ironically, I guess ironic is probably not the right word for it, but Utah plays Oklahoma State, as does Kansas State. So there's a little bit of maybe that's a poor choice on my end with Oklahoma State having a pretty tough conference slate. Just playing, they host Oklahoma, and they actually play them in back-to-back weeks. This was the other part I was going to say. They host Utah, and then they're on the road at Kansas State. So not easy, not an easy stretch there. But yeah, we'll see. Again, I think this is the conference where it's probably the most wide open.
Yeah,
where I feel like the least confident in my pick. But maybe we can transition to one that's I don't know. Also, a new look conference in the Atlantic Coast Conference. Additions, the Atlantic Coast Conference, the All Coast Conference, as they're sort of nicknaming it on Twitter nowadays, with Stanford and Cal being added to the league. Cory, how do you see the ACC shaking out in 2024?
I think we kind of say it's funny that you say that the Big 12 is the hardest to pick, or maybe I think this ACC is right there with it.
Partially because it's right there.
Not because there are, not because there are teams that are a lot of, like, I think there are 2 or 3 teams that are better than everyone else, 2 or 3, but the scheduling of the ACC is
very uneven.
Yeah, and people can get in that you wouldn't expect. Florida State's the defending champion. They, in my opinion, have the best coach in Mike Norvell, but they do not have the most talent in this league. I think you have Clemson and Miami that have the most talent, and quite frankly, they have easier schedules. So give me Clemson and Miami in the ACC championship, with Clemson beating Miami. Now, I would love to see Florida State lose to Miami and end up playing them in the ACC championship and have Florida State beat Miami in the ACC championship. Like, as a revenge game, that'd be fun to watch. It's just for a storyline.
I'd much rather see them beat them twice, or just beat them once and not have to deal with them in the ACC championship game.
But it would be a fun little,
I hear
in your face. Oh yeah, you beat us. Whatever. I just think that Florida State has a chance to slip up in too many spots. They have a little bit harder schedule than those two teams. And the fact that they play SMU, they play Miami, they play Clemson, they play. Do they play Tech? No, they don't play Tech this year. Do they?
They don't.
They don't. Okay, yeah.
They play, their conference slate is as follows. They play, they open conference play. They're interesting because they play their first 2 conference games to start the season. So Georgia Tech, Boston College, Cal, at SMU. I'm just going over the conference games. Home against Clemson, at Duke, at Miami, home against North Carolina. And that's their final conference game.
Yeah. So they kind of wrap up for the conference play pretty early, because after North Carolina they play Notre Dame, and then
Notre Dame bye week, Charleston Southern, Florida game. So they play 1 conference game in the month of November. So their part of the ACC race will be decided pretty quick.
Yeah, and I think there's a chance that they could slip up against Miami or Clemson or SMU or even
all 3.
Yeah, and it's just the fact that Clemson and Miami have so much easier schedules. The question is will their coaches hinder them? Cristobal has caused some problems with his team, but will the talent outweigh his coaching? It did in Oregon eventually. And then the other question is
well, it did and then it didn't.
Yeah, well, it got them to the Pac-12 championship. They won.
Yeah, so they won 2. The second one they won by default because Washington couldn't play because they all had COVID.
Yeah, exactly.
So that one to me is like, I don't really count that one.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's I'm right there with you on Miami having just, in my opinion, just a paper thin schedule. Like, it really is. Like, Florida State, Louisville are the only 2 tough teams they play, and I'm not as high on Louisville as other people are. So like, I don't doubt Jeff Brom. I'm just more like, I need to see it again. Like, that was a nice opening act, but almost the entire team turns over, with a few exceptions. Ashton Gelati is a great defensive end, but new quarterback, almost an entirely new receiving core, and also like Colin Lacey, who was expected to be a big part of that, broke his collarbone the other day, so he'll be out for who knows exactly, but I don't know. I don't see that. So like Miami, there aren't any excuses this year is kind of what I'm saying.
But there also hasn't been any excuses in the last few years. They're like the schedule's been relatively easy for 2 years for running, and this will be the third year.
You're not wrong.
And they went 7-5 last year.
7-5, yep.
Like that's where it's like this team should be
with 2 overtime wins. I would say they were a breath away from 5-7 again.
I don't know. Like I want to believe in this team, and I think if this team doesn't play within its system, like Cam Ward can potentially make this team better because he won't listen to he won't he won't do what he's been told, which is kind of what has happened in Miami. I know you have a different offensive coordinator, but like quarterbacks have come to die at Miami a little bit, like, and have been better off once they leave. And so it's like, I know you have different coaches, but if Chris Paul gets out of the way and let those coaches coach, great. But if he doesn't, there's an issue.
I mean, even then, like, I think some people had some questions about Dawson last year because, like, it seemed like he lost his early in the year. He looked really good. Like, they scored a bunch of points on A&M, and then like you have like the 20-6 effort versus NC State, like toward the back half of the season. So I think that there's a lot to prove there. But yeah, I just can't get around their schedule. I think it's pretty manageable, pretty navigable. So I'm going to choose Miami to be in the title game, and I'm actually going to go unconventional. I think NC State breaks through this year. They have a pretty manageable schedule by ACC standards. Here's their ACC schedule: at Clemson, so not a good start, right? Like that's a tough one. But even then, like if you're able to afford a loss there, which I think you might be able to, just given some of the other schedules that are on the docket. Clemson still would need to play Florida State and would need to play a couple of other teams that I think will challenge them. So they play at Virginia Tech, for example. So that could be a potential loss for Clemson. So you could still get the door open back for you if you're NC State. But outside of that game, they play so at Clemson, host Wake Forest, host Syracuse, at Cal. Again, long road trip, but in theory they should win that game. Bye week, host Stanford, host Duke, bye week, at Georgia Tech. Not easy, but not a killer road environment either. Yeah. And then at North Carolina, who they've owned for the last little bit. So
what's on Mac Brown?
Oh, he knows. Like
he'd be bitter.
Oh yeah. So I think NC State finds a way to break through and actually get into that ACC title game. I've got the Hurricanes winning.
Interesting here is if you do have a number of teams go like 7-1 or so in the ACC or whatnot.
I don't know what the tiebreakers are.
Tiebreaker is strength of schedule within the ACC, which leans towards a FSU or a Clemson, whoever, if they can get to 7-1.
And when they say strength of schedule, do they mean like what the record of your opponents was in ACC play?
Yeah.
So you want good teams,
good people, but you want to beat them.
But you also want to play like people that maybe have a softer schedule that maybe inflates their record. Like I don't know. It gets wild. Yeah, I feel like these large conferences aren't built to last. So we'll see what happens. Because
this idea of not doing divisions, I'm not a huge fan of. A little bit. It's like imagine if you took the entire like NFL, NFC, and you're like, all right, the top 4 teams are the only teams that make it. It's like, all right, well, it doesn't matter if you play in the worst conference and you're a 9-6 team anymore, and you've won your little division, you don't get into the playoffs anymore.
Yeah,
and like that's kind of how it's going to be. You're going to have good teams that don't get into their conference championship, and which is going to make picking the playoff teams even more muddy.
Yeah, it makes it even harder for them. Yeah, I'm right there with you. I just like, to me, like I wish there was this thing where it's like, no, we're going to use conference championship games as sort of the first leg of the playoff. Mm-hmm. And then from there, you could kind of build off of that because
if you don't win your conference championship, then you're out.
Well, I'm not even necessarily saying that, but like that could be that's kind of what they, in a world where you have automatic qualifiers and maybe only a few at-large bids, it kind of becomes de facto play-in games, right? It kind of becomes that first round.
Yeah.
But again, we've kind of rehearsed my feelings on this expanded playoff and where they kind of missed and missed some opportunities to, I think, do things better, but again, probably not the profit maximizing way. So, anyway, that was kind of my thought process, was like, with these larger conferences, you're right, there's going to be larger disparities in who gets schedules that maybe have a greater proportion of the upper crust of a conference on their slate versus others that maybe are flying under the radar. Okay, on to the Big Ten. Oh, sorry, I think I actually wrote them down the other way. I changed tabs. So SEC first, then Big Ten.
I don't care.
Okay, we'll stay in the Southeast. I mean, most of the ACC is kind of roughly in the Southeast, more or less, with some Northeast, some Texas, and a couple of West Coast sprinkled in there. Yeah, SEC. I guess you went first last go around. I'll choose this one. I think, and this is without me looking at schedules here, so I think, first of all, I got Georgia winning it, right? Like, I'm just not going to outthink the room here. I got Georgia winning. I got Georgia playing in the game. I think I will go with Alabama as their opponent. I don't feel great about that pick. I just, like, it's between them, Texas, Tennessee, maybe Texas A&M. Like, I'm high on the talent on Texas A&M, and I am big on vibes where, Elko's been able to turn it around quickly at Duke and using a lot of the same pieces that Cutcliffe had. Now he's doing it at A&M. So I think that can turn around faster than most can, and they have a pretty favorable schedule. So it's between those. I think I'm just going to go with what I know, which is Alabama and Kalen DeBoer both win a lot of games. So I'm going to lean into that.
I don't think that's a bad idea. I do think Georgia is a tier above all the other teams here.
I agree.
They don't have as hard a schedule as everybody. I mean, they do play Bama and they do play Texas, who are the other two teams that people would suggest. But they are, in my opinion, the best team, and I think that they're going to make it to the SEC championship game. Depending how Texas handles their running back issue, since they've already lost two of them in during practice for the whole year.
Yeah.
I'm interested to see how this goes. It could become a bloodbath down. It's like you might have a 12-0 team and then like 4-9-3 teams or like whatever else. Give me Texas still to rise above it. I was a non-Sarkisian believer last year. He proved to adapt to his team, although he didn't rely on the running as much as I would have liked him to on some of those times. Now he's not going to be able to anyway, so it doesn't really matter. I just think that team's got the talent and the playmakers to beat the teams that they should beat. And I feel like they're going to be outscoring teams. They're not going to play as good defense as everybody else, but they're going to just outscore these teams. And they have themselves in the position to weather an issue at quarterback or an issue, in the receiving core or wherever their weapons are, minus maybe the running back. We'll see how that goes. I mean, they've still got talent that they've brought in. It's just unproven talent. And so they have that talent to weather any injuries. And so I see that team as the next best team there. So give me Texas and Georgia in the championship game, and give me Georgia to win that game. So I mean, don't overthink it, like you said.
Yeah. All right. Final one here. We'll again try and keep this under 30 minutes. We're doing well right now. We're on pace to Big Ten championship game. I guess I went first with the SEC. Talk me through your Big Ten picks.
So this is a lot, again, schedule. So you got to look at who's got easy schedules, who doesn't have easy schedules. There's some brutal schedules in this conference. I mean, I'm just looking through them quickly. Oregon plays who? Michigan, Ohio State, and Washington. Like, Washington, they're not going to be the same team, but Michigan's going to be a good team, and Ohio State's going to be a good team. But you get Ohio State at home, I believe. Yeah, you get Ohio State at home. And let's see, I'm looking across the other one. Penn State has a relatively easy schedule. I mean, you play USC away, but then you do have Ohio State at home. But like, those are the only two teams. Like, if I look at Ohio State, you got Oregon, you've got Penn State, and then they play Michigan. Like, those are the three teams I'm looking at: Penn State, Ohio State, and Oregon, and I think you might have a preview to the championship on October 12th, where Oregon and Ohio State play each other, and I think it'll be a great game. You and I have talked about potentially going up there. I don't know if we're going to be able to afford to go up there, or have the time to go up there. And I don't know if I'm going to have the heart to spend that much money on that thing, but you'll get a preview of the game, and then you'll get the rematch potentially. And I'm excited to see how that goes. Even still, like if Penn State sneaks in and you got Ohio State, you might have a rematch of those two. I'm kind of writing Michigan off. I know that they have the talent to do it. They return the people, but I don't believe in Sharon Moore, and I believe Harbaugh was a reason why that team was actually a lot better than they were. And I think also cheating helps, to be frank.
Yeah.
And so I think there's a reason that this team isn't necessarily going to be considered to win the Big 12 or Big 10. Give me Oregon and Ohio State. And as far as coaches, I think Dan.
Yeah, Dan Lanning. Yeah, he got it.
I was going to say Dan Manning. I'm like, it's not Manning. I think Dan Lanning is the better coach. I'm interested to see how he adapts, because he got outcoached by Kenny DeBoer in the Pac-12 championship
multiple times. Well, yeah, I was going to say he never beat DeBoar.
Yeah, and I agree. He got beat there,
which is interesting. Yeah,
I'm not a huge believer in Ryan Day as a coach. I think Ryan Day recruits well. I think he's got a good system. I don't know if he's a good adapting to a good team. So give me Oregon to win the Big Ten over Ohio State.
Yeah, I think if they're in the game, they win it. And the only thing I really put on them to not be in the game is, yeah, you mentioned their schedule. The thing that stands out to me about their schedule is not just who they play, which again, they do play Ohio State, they play Michigan, but they have a run of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 consecutive games. They have a bye week after the third week of the season, and then they don't have a bye week again until the second to last week of the season. They have a bye week, and then they play Washington, which kind of looks like they scheduled this expecting Washington to be a powerhouse, which I don't this year. I think Jed Fish is a good coach. I think he'll get it back to a place maybe not quite where DeBoer had it, but he'll get it back. But it's going to take a minute or two. By a minute, I mean a season or two. But 8 straight, and you close it off at Wisconsin. Not an easy place to play.
I'm very excited to watch Wisconsin this year.
Yeah, I mean, like, I'm not necessarily buying a bunch of Wisconsin hype, but I'm just saying, like, at the end of a 8-game slog, you got to travel there, and especially if you, like, again, this is 2 weeks after you are at Michigan, so you're flying back and forth. Like, I just can see, like, if they drop if they drop round 1 to Ohio State, I'm not sure they can fight their way back and get a second round.
You think that because they go back and forth like 3 or 4 times?
Yeah,
and it's either going to be tiresome or it's become routine, and people are used to it a little bit.
Fair. But it's brand new to the sport, right? Like,
right.
There's those cross game, like there's been 1 or 2 of those, like in the early conference, like that's really it. But this is going to become the routine. But I think this is the adapting to that season. So that's my only concern with Oregon. I think I do have the same picks as you. I do think there is an outside shot that Michigan gets in. I'm maybe a little bit higher on Michigan than you are. And if you look at their schedule, so their conference schedule specifically, so they host USC, who I'm not a huge believer in, right? Like they're kind of in like prove it mode to me. Then Minnesota, I feel good about that one. Then they're on the road at Washington, which is again a travel game, but again for a matchup perspective, I think it's fine. Then there's a bye week. Then they're at Illinois. I expect them to win that game. They host Michigan State. I expect them to win that game. Host Oregon. Coin toss, right? I think that's the first one where I'm like, coin toss. At Indiana, I expect them to win that game. Bye week, host Northwestern, at Ohio State. So like they're right there. I kind of see them as an opportunity. I actually am going to pick that same matchup. I think Oregon and Ohio State. I think Ohio State wins the first one, but I don't think they win the second. But yeah, I just antennas up for that 8-game stretch for Oregon. That's a lot to ask with no breather in the middle.
It is. And I mentioned that I'm excited to watch Wisconsin. You have Phil Longo, and You have Tyler Van Dyke, and if they can put it together, they have a potential to get in as well. What I'm saying, just like you have SC, you're over at SC, but then you have Purdue at home. You're at Rutgers. You're at Northwestern. You have to go to Penn State. But if you can pull out a win at Penn State or win against Penn State or Oregon, which you both have at home, which you have both of them at home, you have a potential to be that right there too. This is where I'm going to tell you, like, we are going to have some sticky stuff come to the end where we have 3 or 4 teams vying to get into.
I think they are going to come much more down to the wire this year, which is that part is exciting to me.
Yes,
it's like, okay, there's going to be more stakes for some of those games.
Yeah, agree.
Well, we're just a shade over 30 minutes. Maybe we just talk, all right, national championship, final prediction heading into the game. Who do you got?
So I think there are 4 teams that are realistically champions this year. Last year, I think I said there were only 2 or 3 that are realistically champions. I picked Michigan to win. Michigan won. This year, I think you've got the realistic champions are Georgia, Ohio State, Oregon, and Texas. Those are the 4 teams that are better than anybody else, in my opinion, and have the ability to weather the storms in some big games. Like, you're going to have to play multiple games within your conference championship and then within the playoffs in order to get here. And I think those are the teams that are built for it. I think there's an outside chance that Alabama could potentially get in. They're a good team. But I don't believe in Milroe as a quarterback. I do believe in DeBoer as a coach to figure out how to use him. But I think we've seen in DeBoer's history, his first year at the season, he loses 1 or 2 games and doesn't quite make it to all the way to the end. So I kind of expect that with those teams. So give me the best team in the nation, Georgia, in the championship game, and give me Ohio State. I think Oregon beats them in the Big 12 or Big 10 championship. They just in the playoffs, and they get to play Georgia. So you have them being beaten. I'm having the other way around a little bit, and then give me Georgia to win. I don't want Georgia to win. It's the homer pick or the easy pick, I guess. But that team is talented. That team is so deep. And even if you lose your quarterback, you're still in a good position to recover. Although I would not be surprised if any of those 4 teams won. I've actually found a way where I was like systematically putting the money down. And it's like, all right, if any 4 of those teams won, I could cover if Georgia wins. And if the other 3 teams win, I make money. And I'm trying to convince myself to drive down to Vegas to go do it.
Nice. Again, not going to outthink the room here. I think Georgia's the pick. I think picking up Trevor Etienne from Florida is a huge pickup. I feel like in the last few years, their running back position hasn't been what it was.
Agreed.
And so having that guy in there, a really, really strong elite talent coupled with what they've got on the offensive line, what they bring back defensively, I think they're going to win it. I didn't actually think through, like, we're not going to hold your feet to the fire on like the matchup there, because I think the way the playoff shakes out, it's going to be hard to predict the 2 combatants necessarily.
I agree with you on that, but
all that being said, I think Oregon is on the cusp, right? And I think it will be, if they get to the title game, that'll be fun, because if you'll recall, one of our first episodes was talking about Oregon getting curb stomped by Georgia in the Chick-fil-A kickoff game. What was it, 45-3, I think?
Oh,
was the score. So it was forever ago, and that would just be a cool thing to see. Okay, all right, after 2 years, where is Dan Lanning at in rebuilding that program?
Yeah, 49.
And it's funny, sorry, what was it?
You're right, 49-3.
49. I said 45. So, but yeah, it was, very decisive. And so it'll be interesting to see how high he's brought that program, if they're able to measure up against what is currently the measuring stick of all college football in the Georgia Bulldogs.
And their recruiting class is only making this team look scarier for the future. So
yeah, it's that Nike money is no joke. Anything else you wanted to add on this week 0? Do you want to talk Florida State?
We can talk quickly Florida State. There's a lot of people that think Georgia Tech has a good chance to upset Florida State. A lot of people referencing 63-3 for Florida State's last time being in front of everybody. I'm going to tell you right now, Florida State's defense is not going to let Georgia Tech do anything. They cover the 11.5 point spread. Florida State wins this game pretty significantly, in my opinion. The offense is not what we would love it to be at Florida State, but this defense is going to be for reals, and they're going to show out. So
okay, give me Georgia Tech to cover. Give me the under in the team in the total as well.
Oh, under 55.
Yeah. Yes, I think this game's got 23-13 written all over it, and that gives me a little bit. Again, that's within it. I think they could play it a little bit closer. Have you seen the surface there? Like, people slip on it. Like, watching the last couple of games, it's always a little bit sloppy. It's a little misty. It's just kind of what the weather is typically like in Ireland this time of year. I just think there's, first game jitters. The whole country is watching, and I'm saying like country like the U.S., not Ireland. But yeah, I think that's a close game. I think there's kinks to work out on both sides, and I think Brent Key is a really good coach, a good motivator. From the time he took over as the interim, that team's been different and has played different. So I'm a big Brent Key fan.
Oh, say go again.
I was just saying I'm a big Brent Key fan. I trust him to get it right, and he's they are in the process of doing that. I don't think they're quite enough to get over the hump over Florida State, but I think this is a close one. I think this one's one that Noles fans will sweat out till the end.
I think Georgia Tech is going to struggle to run against Florida State because they've got a great interior.
True.
The pass rush is going to get after Haynes, and Haynes is a little bit of a gunslinger, and he's going to get picked off a few times. That's why I think this is where I think Florida State breaks it open.
That's true. He can throw the ball to you, that's for sure.
and give me the first touchdown and beat it by a defensive player by Florida State.
Oh, okay, awesome. I don't know what the prop bet would be on that, but
probably significant.
Yeah, it probably would be. All right. Well, if you don't have anything else, I'm good to wrap.
We need to talk Heisman's next week before.
Yeah, we can do that. We can do that. I forgot about that. Yeah. So we'll stay tuned to that Heisman talk next week. Quick debrief of week 0, and we'll get into the real start of college football for week 1. Excited for it. Thanks, and thanks to all of our listeners. We're excited to be back and appreciate your patience as there's been some shuffling on availability with the brothers. Love you both, and yeah, we'll talk next week. So yeah.